Okay, good evening, everyone. Should we start?
I will just give a brief introduction about Ma'am. Ma'am is an alumni of SPA Delhi, as well as she has worked in the corporate sector as well as currently working with AILLSG, and is a very great faculty that we have. So yes, ma'am, I request you to begin with your session.
Thank you. Thank you, Sai. That was quite a generous kind of an introduction, but yes. Yes, I teach with Examasher. I've been with Examasher, I think, now for almost 4 years. And yes, I take history and some other environment related subjects also, but history being my favorite one. I like to take demo history lectures. I like to take demo history. That's what. For today, I chose Islamic architecture because that's something that all of us have either visited some monument or something. So it's most relatable, is what I feel, and hence I chose to take Islamic architecture as the demo lecture. We have we have had our uh, we have visits to Humayun's tomb, or maybe people who've lived or worked in Delhi or studied in Delhi, they've had a lot of Mughal architecture exposure. We also go to many places or we have heard about a lot of mosques or bigger mosques which are across the globe. There's Makkah Medina that we know about, which is like the sacred place for people who follow Islam. So there's a lot that all of us have heard and we relate to or we know about at some level. And hence let's take a short look at what Islamic architecture holds when it comes to gate exam, right? So if we look at the spread of Islamic empire, we will see that the entire civilization of Mesopotamia, then the Roman Empire, the Egyptian Empire, all were slowly at some point of time taken over by the Islamic rulers. Right, so we have Persia, Syria, Berber, Spain. So even when you cross the Mediterranean Sea and go towards the western side, you will see that there was also influence there. Now, what is very interesting when it comes to Islamic architecture is that they took their culture to these places, but also incorporated other existing local cultures into their architecture. So it was not just purely Islamic, but you will also see, just Mughal architecture has a lot of Indian architecture features, yeah, Rajputana features in it. Similarly, when you go to Spain and Berbers, वहाँ पे the ceramic tiles का जो work they do on the facades of the building, that was taken and that was then incorporated. If you look at even if you look at Roman buildings, the kind of facades that they have built, so they, apart from their own sensibility and own culture, they also incorporated designs and elements from other cultures or local cultures as well. So you see, it was a great spread with variety of things coming into picture. So when you look at architecture from Persia and Syria, you will definitely see the impact of Mesopotamian or Sumerian architecture there. Similarly, when you talk about Egyptian architecture, you will also see Islamic Egyptian architecture having features which were typically Egyptian, which comes from your pyramids or it comes from the kind of tombs that they built. So yes, it included all these kind of cultures and had a wide spread across the globe. Of course, when you are such a big empire and it's not just um, you are not just conquering and staying there on a temporary basis, but now this is your home. So then you have a wide variety of buildings. So when we even look at Roman architecture, you will see that the kind of society or the kind of lifestyle that people have shapes the kind of structures that you will see. So when the societies were not democratic, there was no need of something like a parliament or something like that. But when you see that the societies will start democratizing, then there will be something which is a House of Commons and everything. But right now, what you see is House of Commons and House of Lords, या जिसको हम दीवाने आम दीवाने खास कहते हैं. So that is a part of the king's campus or the kind of premises that where he is leading from, he or she is leading from. But then when later on we see democracy coming in into societies, you will see that these were separate houses. This we have Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, or we have an entire building which is dedicated to this kind of political discussions and all of that. So then you will see a shift in the kind of structures which are required within the society. So currently, you will see very basic structures, which is a house to live, a place to worship, kind of fort because you're constantly defending your empire from external powers. You will also, when we talk about Byzantine architecture and everything, so the picture that you see in the mosque example is the blue mosque, is the Suleimania blue mosque, right? So this also has a lot of smaller Islamic kingdoms ka influence, which is Ottoman Empire or things like that. So you have a house to live, you have a place of worship, you have tombs, which are a very important part of their culture. So tombs and very grand looking tombs. अगर आप देखो तो Humayun's tomb is a big example. Taj Mahal in itself is a tomb, is a very big example. You go to if you've been to there, when you go to Sundar Nursery, also there are smaller tombs that you will see. So there are tombs, multiple tombs that you will see across India and across the globe wherever Islamic rulers had their influence. And then of course forts because you're constantly having some sort of war or battle or conflict, so you need some layer of protection as well. And then in within these buildings you will see elements which are very Islamic and elements which are taken from some local culture and incorporated or blended in very well. So one of the elements that you will very commonly see is arabesque. So ito sculpting, and sculpting in marble is a very was a very common thing, and arabesque is something which is a infinite kind of a pattern with of all your flowers and creepers and leaves and smaller insects and all of that. It's a very natural sort of infinite pattern. It symbolizes unity and power, so something that doesn't have an end and a start, so that in all of it looks like a whole. So there's no parts coming in together, but it's all a whole. So arabesques were representing unity and power and were a very common sight when it comes to Islamic architecture. Then you must have also seen motifs. So motifs are your stucco mein colored gems or colored stones being put together in a geometric pattern to form like an artistic element. Right? So motifs was that. Then Islamic calligraphy. If you look at any religion and the religious structures that follow, you will see that there was some way of communicating it to the common people as to what the point of or what is the ideology trying to tell you. Okay. So if you visit temples, then you must have seen that there are always either paintings that are wall paintings that are there, or there are some sort of prayers written somewhere. Similarly, in Islamic architecture also, you will see that Islamic calligraphy was not just an artistic element, was also a way to communicate what the prophecy or what the ideology is trying to tell you. What is good and bad? How should you live your life? Just say if you go to church, there are stained glass paintings which are small snippets of the Christ's life or the stories that follow before his birth, after his birth, and everything. So Islamic calligraphy is not just an artistic element, but also something that uh, is a way to communicate the ideology. Then Mukarna, because this particular form or this particular architecture has a lot of domes and vaults. Uh, these are spaces, or yeah, this is not new, or this is not something that Islamic architecture invented. Romans started the thing of having an arch and a vault and a dome and a tunnel or a nave or whatever. But these were all empty spaces. So if you look at a long central corridor of a church, which is called a nave, or the side corridors, which are called aisle, some older structures will have nothing on their ceiling. But as you move towards modernization and later parts of the history, you will see that they had very elaborate paintings, frescoes done in the ceilings also. So similarly, when you talk about vaults and domes in Islamic architecture, these were really big empty spaces, then which they filled up with some sort of again calligraphy colors. Here you will see that green, blue, golden yellow kind of colors are symbolic. So they are used quite a lot. If you look at the geometric pattern also, The mukarna, the calligraphy, everything is the number 8, and these two, three colors are something which are very significant in their culture, right? So all of these undersides of domes and arches and walls were decorated, and they were. This is called mukarna. So the internal part of underside of this of these things, structural elements, is called mukarna, and it had paintings, or it had calligraphy, or it has patterns. So basically, not left empty just like that. Then it also, so these were artistic elements, but there were also structural elements that will help you identify that, oh, this is an Islamic architectural example. So symmetry being one. So if you go to Humayun's tomb also, there is a vertical symmetry and there is a horizontal symmetry. The most popular picture that everybody tries to click of a Humayun's tomb is that वो water fountain के साथ में you try to make an exact mirror image horizontally as well. Vertically it is there, but horizontally as well, वो पानी में पूरा हुमायूं's tomb का रिफ्लेक्शन लेके लोग फोटो खींचने की कोशिश करते हैं. So that's the most popular picture that you will see of Humayun's tomb, right? So symmetry, be it horizontal, be it vertical, was very important. Also, the dome size varied. So when you talk about temples, temples also have a bigger kind of tower over the place of importance. Similarly, here also, if you have multiple domes, the bigger dome will be on the Qibla wall, or the wall which is in the which denotes the direction of Makkah, right? So, and then there can be multiple other domes which are smaller than this major bigger dome. But domes being apart, arches being apart, a series arcade, that is a series of arches, is also a very important part. Minarets, and there are variety of minarets that you will see across the globe wherever Islamic architecture examples exist. There is the Ottoman minaret, which is very pointy and has a small diameter at the base. Then you have the Taj Mahal wala, Chhatri wale minarets, which has the Rajputana Chhatri on the top. Then you have the Yemeni minarets, which more look like a traffic cone sort of a mm, kind of a look. Then you have the ceramic tiles wala designed colorful red color incorporating Sivia based minarets. Then you have the spiral minarets. So there are multiple kinds of minarets which show you, or which will tell you where this particular building belongs to, right? So all of this, and then there is a lot of variety in domes as well. So when you have variety in arches, when you have variety in walls, there is a variety in domes as well. So Islamic architecture experimented with arches and walls quite a lot. So the pointed arch that you see, the horseshoe arches that you see, they introduced a variety of arches. Of course, they took it from Romans, that okay, arch was taken from them, inspired by them, but then they also worked around it so that their structure could respond to what their requirement was. So you have pointed domes, you have onion domes, you have orgy domes. All of these variety comes from the kind of arches that you had come up with. And even these domes were decorated from inside and outside. So these are a few structural elements that will signify, or that will show you that this is a proper Islamic structure from where exactly. Then there are also some other spatial elements that come into picture. One of which is Ivan, ya Ivan जिसको कहते हैं. So this is like an entrance foyer sort of a space. So most of your you will always have a very high plinth. Okay. So when you gum up the plinth, and there is the open platform, before you transition from this outer space into an inner space, you will have a transition space, which is called Ivan. Now, this is an arched doorway or a gateway that takes you inside the structure. So that is your connection between outside and inside world, but extremely decorated. So if you look, there is calligraphy. There are smaller arches which are within one bigger arch. Then there is a lot of geometric patterns decorating the side walls of the gateway. So all of that. So that is Ivan for you, which is like an entrance foyer. Then you have hypostyle hall, which was extremely common in most of your religious structures, be it any religion, right? So having a bigger central hall, which is the centerpiece, and then everything is set up around it. So multiple columns lining a big hall, and with corridors on both the sides, right? So if you go to a temple also, it's a similar arrangement. When you see Egyptian temples also, they also had a similar arrangement. Right? And then mihrab. So on the wall of Qibla, which is denoting the direction of Makkah, to which you are supposed to face and pray, on that wall there is a small arch, or there is a small niche which is called mihrab, which is kind of the point of importance on that entire wall, right? So that is the mihrab, which was again a part of religious structure. So if you will see many mosques, or you will see a lot of forts, जैसे आगरा फोर्ट में भी आप जाएंगे, तो इस तरह का arrangement आपको, you will be able to see all of these things, all of these elements you can notice when you visit any Mughal architectural example, or even if you go to Jammu, Srinagar, or if you go to Bejapur, or if you go to Aurangabad, where there were similar rulers, but other rulers as well apart from. So you can go to Bhopal and see the kind of work that Nizams have taken in, Begums and Nizams, or Lucknow. So there is a wide variety of the kind of architecture, Islamic architecture, that we have in our country as well. So there's things with Hyderabad, there's Lucknow. So these were the major points where these people were ruling for a very long time and have contributed to architecture in a very big way. Right. Apart from that, you have courtyards and gardens, which are extremely popular. Courtyard was also a very big feature where there is a big, so if you have gone to Jami Masjid or anywhere, a big courtyard with a water tank or a small fountain is very important. They also follow a ritual where they clean up before they enter the space. So they have ablution tanks accordingly. Gardens also form a very important place in Islamic architecture. You must have seen it in Humayun's tomb also, or Char Bagh basically, where you divide the plot, or you divide the garden into four quadrants, and then further divide each quadrant uh, into multiple squares. It is a 9 square arrangement basically. And then every quadrant has its own theme, and there is a continuous channel of water that flows through this entire garden. So this is the kind of design that their scriptures say that existed in heaven, and that is why they try to replicate it on the ground in their homes or in their religious places, so that they can invite the divine in. So that also forms a very important part of their architecture. Okay, are we okay up till now? Have you followed the basics of what Islamic architecture is all about? I will need this. I keep needing this reassurance time again. Even if this is a demo lecture, you can definitely say, is it working or not working? Or if there's something specific that I've missed up till now. Oh, काफी सारा silence. Okay, cool. I think I will finish the part and then let you think if it worked for you. Okay, so apart from that, like I said, they borrowed arches, or they took arches from Roman architecture, but they didn't sit still with it, right? So Roman architects were majorly building semicircular arches, which are the basic kinds of arches. But then, when Islamic architecture took it, they experimented a lot with the kind of arches which worked in their favor, or the kind of things that they were structurally expecting, right? So, semicircular arch was first kind of modified into a horseshoe arch. A semicircular arch is very simple, right? If you just look at the design here also, this is a semicircular arch. Now, if I look at it, this is the beginning of my semicircle. This is the kind of extra height that I get if I don't make a rectangular opening. So this is the only extra height that I achieve. But if I want to get a bigger height, if I want to achieve bigger height, then I have to either increase my span, or do place something with it, or make wider columns so that bigger semicircular can be, so bigger diameter can be supported, something like that. But what if I don't want to make my structure bulky, but I still want to achieve the kind of height that I want to? Now, what they wanted was very simple, that they wanted to increase this rise. the base and the gap between the internal part of the arch and the base is called rise. They wanted to increase that rise so that they get height in their arch. So if you look at this particular arch here you will see that they start like they want to build an arch, but they take their point in and they almost draw a circle. They don't stop at semicircle. They almost draw a circle. They almost draw a circle, right? Only a very small part of this circle, a very small segment, comes below their springing point or below this point basically from where they have started building the arch up, right? So only a small they're not making semicircle anymore. They're making an almost a complete circle with a very small part below your beginning line, right? Now this because of this span remains the same. The columns don't have to bulk up, but the rise you get is much higher. And because this looks like a keyhole or a horseshoe, do you guys know what a horseshoe is? So horseshoe is a iron piece, U-shaped piece, which is bolted to the foot of a horse. And that is what makes the sound of the tuck, tuck, tuck that you hear when a horse is running. So that piece of metal which is bolted in the horse's hoof, is called a horseshoe, right? Um, because the shape looks like that, it is called a horseshoe arch. But what it ends up doing for you is that it's a modification of semicircular arch, which is giving you slightly more height as compared to a semicircular arch. So if I would have made a semicircular arch, probably this would have been my rise, right? Now, if you see, it gives me almost the double height than what a semicircle could give me, right? So this was the idea with which they modified the arch. Then again, when you have arches or a series of arches, you generally use it to cover or line a corridor with it. Now, if you want to cover a corridor through arches, either you have very heavy columns that are supporting the load of the entire corridor and the structure above it, or you have to then kind of have a continuous wall and you can't have like multiple arches or you have less number of arches because too much puncture can compromise the structural stability. To, to counter that, they made another modification to semicircular arch, which is called a transverse arch, which has a continuous wall running on one side of your corridor, and then there is a series of columns which are supporting arches along the corridor. So this is generally this. If this is your corridor, the arches are here, right? So similar. So there are arches in series. Yeah, ऐसे you see this something like this, and then the corridor runs this way, right? But here, what they did is that the arch ran like this. So you have a wall supporting the arch on this side, which is a continuous wall, and then there are columns which are supporting here, right? Now these columns don't have to be very wide because one side the arches have really proper running support. So you don't have to bulk up these columns and make them very wide, and you can have more space or more span in between the columns, which gives your building a more light and uh, open sort of a look, right? And forms a very interesting pattern in the corridor as well. Here, you will see that they were not going for too much height as compared to what they were trying to do in horseshoe. They were not looking for too much height, but they were looking for a lighter structural feature, right? So here you will see a slight turn outwards. Instead of going in with the arch, they went slightly outwards. And a very, what do you say, a very subdued sort of an arch, which is not really semicircular. It is more like a part of the segment sort of. So it's a very shallow arch, I will say, shallow arch. But what they are trying to achieve is the openness which they have which they could do with this kind of arch. So these are transverse arches. Again, when they needed more height, but they also needed the corridors to not look bulky and have more open and light feeling, they again modified the semicircular arch to have a pointed arch. Now, what a semicircular arch does is it is pushing, and if you remember the vector force and everything which is taught in 11, 12 physics, you will realize that the semicircular arch is pushing the entire force or the entire load that comes on it through the columns into the ground, right? Here, what happens is that because instead of going like this, to slightly turn it up, you have division of load into the side columns and into toward vertically down into the side in the walls as well, which helps this remain pressed against each other and forms a pointed arch, which allows you more height, more span, more light kind of structural response, right? So these are the kind of changes that they brought into basic semicircular arch to fit their requirements. Another arch kind is Augie arch, which has a slight bend before it joins at the center. Pointed arch का एक modification है, where there is a slight S-shaped arch. There's a slight bend before it joins on the top. Because of its shape, S kind of a shape, it's called an Augie arch. Then you have one aesthetic idea ka arch, which is called multifoil arch. So here there is no structural requirement that they're looking for, but they're more focusing on arch as an aesthetic element. So you have more cusps. These are called, so this here is called a cusp, C-U-S-P cusp. So these are multiple cusps on the internal part of the arch, because of which it is called a multifoil arch. These can be intersecting, so you will see that here they are intersecting arches, right? This is all for aesthetics. This is not something, इससे कोई structural purpose उनके दिमाग में नहीं था. But yes, they played around with arches quite a lot when it comes to Islamic architecture and made very interesting structures as well. Coming to a few examples before I close the demo. I had mentioned that the color golden, green, blue, and number 8 has a lot of importance. So if you look at the base of the Taj Mahal, it is not proper octagon, but it has those chamfered ends which makes it an octagon. The central mausoleum is always an octagon. Here, the Dome of the Rock, which is the oldest existing example of Islamic architecture, has an octagonal base. It has a central, bigger circular dome, which was made of wood earlier, but now is after it was burned down and everything, it was changed. You have 8 columns in the front. You have an octagon as the base. You have your calligraphy done on the walls. You have multiple arches. You have a bigger central dome, signifying the place where the Dome of the Rock. So Dome of the Rock meaning is dome ke niche. Below there is a gallery through which you go down to a basement where a significant or a sacred rock is kept. And the dome signifies the place where the rock is kept. Hence, Dome of the Rock is the name. So this is one example. Then we of course have the Qutub complex in Delhi, which was a contribution of multiple slave dynasty, Khilji dynasty kings or rulers. So you have contributions from Alauddin Khilji, Iltutmish, Kutubuddin Aibak. Everything that you see, all the structures that you see here were built by different people. So Qutub Minar was by somebody else. Quwwatul Islam Mosque was by somebody else. The Alai Minar was Alauddin Khilji's pet project. The Alai Darwaza was done by somebody else. There's an Iltutmish's tomb, which was made by his family for him. There's a madrasa. There's Khilji's tomb. Then there's iron pillar in the complex, which was brought from some other Udaygiri ke Raja ke paas se. They had got that iron pillar here. So there are multiple structures here, and this bigger arcade also that you see on one side of the complex, this arcade was also not built one go. It was a very evolving process. It was built in portions. When you look at the Quwwatul Islam Mosque also, the roof is supported by columns which were brought from the remains of 27 different temples. So when you look at the photographs, the columns are not typically Islamic. There are a lot of features in Qutub Minar also. With every story, the diameter keeps reducing, and when you look at the base of every story, you will see a kind of uh, balcony or the chajja, or the eaves that make the story very interestingly carved. It is a brick tower, which is one of a kind when it comes to that tall a tower, only made with bricks. Alai Minar was imagined or was conceptualized to beat Qutub Minar, and hence, if you look at the picture on the right, which shows you the aerial view of Qutub Complex, you can see that it was a way bigger project than Qutub Minar. If it would have succeeded, कुतुब मीनार कुछ भी नहीं होता उसके सामने. अगर आप बेस ही देखो अलाय मीनार का, दिस इज अलाय मीनार का बेस. So if you imagine if it reached its completion, what was the plan when they started making it, right? So these are various structures which are a part of Qutub complex. Then, yes, of course, we have Alai Darwaza. Alai Darwaza being the first building in India to use Islamic architectural principles. So you will have lattice jali, you have sandstone, you have marble cladding, you have a horseshoe arch, which has a very interesting feature. You have these conjuras or kangura, jisko bolte hain. On the intrados or the inside of the arch, there are spikes, which is a very important feature. These spikes were later on also used to crush animal heads while they were trying to enter a specific structure. But yes, then you see Islamic calligraphy on the Qutub Minar also. If you look at Qutub Minar, it's not a smooth circle as a base. It's a multi-cusp base, right? So if you look at the base of Qutub Minar, it is something like this, right? It has multiple cusps. And if you similarly look at even Burj Khalifa's base, it is very similar to this. So Burj Khalifa's base has something like this. It has three kind of petal sort of a arrangement. So it has an intersecting petal arrangement का base. So because आप एक circle को उतना अच्छे से support नहीं कर सकते. A proper full circle is not a good idea when it comes to stability. So multicast base, right? It was of course it was celebrating Muhammad Ghori's victory over Prithviraj Chauhan, so the establishment of Islamic rule in India as well. Sand made of sandstone and marble. That marble has now washed off quite a lot because of the time that has passed. So in this picture, you can see a little bit of marble left on the top stories, but from the lower stories, it has mostly washed off. There is a circular staircase that takes you to the top in within Qutub Minar, but now because that staircase is all broken and the structure is very flimsy from the inside, you're not allowed to go. But there in 50s and early 60s, it was allowed. People were allowed to go till the top of Qutub Minar. Right? It has carvings or inscriptions from Quran written on it because it talked about the establishment of Islamic rule in the country. Then Quwwatul Islam Mosque, like I said, the roof is supported by columns from 27 different temples. You can see the variety, the difference in columns. An iron pillar which was supposed to be rust free, but now it's starting to catch some dust. And you will see that the iron pillar has an animal capital. So when we discuss everything in order, you will notice that अशोक ने बनाए हुए जो धर्म स्तंभ थे या even the Sarnath pillar that we talk about from which our emblem is inspired or emblem is taken, all of these have animal capitals. So animal capitals was something that began in Persian architecture and Greek architecture, and then it carried forward because these were also places where Ashok went and gave the message of Buddhism, right? So wherever he went, he to mark that I have been here, he made a dharmastamba. And this Udaygiri place was also one of his roots. And hence, this particular column or this particular pillar, we tell you that it was not an Islamic feature. It was brought from somewhere and placed here. Because again, it was a souvenir sort of a thing that they got from some conquest, right? So it was from the time of Chandragupta to Vikramaditya, and it was brought from Udaygiri to this particular complex. Then, like I said, there are other structures here. There is Iltutmish's tomb. There's a Lai Minar. There's Khilji's tomb. There's tomb of Muhammad Ali, who was one of the kind of people of importance in the court of rulers. So his tomb is also there. So yes, this is majorly, and then a very big part of when we come to history of Indian history or Islamic architectural history, Mughal architecture forms a very important base of that. Mughal rule or Mughal dynasty was established by Babur in 1526. It was very quickly after his death was taken over by Humayun. Humayun laid the foundation of Mughal architecture in the country. Not Mughal architecture, Mughal empire in the country. What Akbar contributed much more because he received a stable sort of empire to rule over because his father had worked and fought and expanded the boundaries for the 26 years that he ruled. So Akbar, when he sat on the throne, he had slight privilege of not being constantly at war because he had a kind of stable um, empire to himself. And and because he ruled for over 50 years, he had a lot of time to contribute, to understand, to spend on architecture and art and music and poetry and everything else. He was succeeded by Jahangir, who was more into gardens and nature. So if you will see that Jahangir contributed more in Charbagh and various gardens. When we talk about Jammu and Kashmir and the beautiful gardens there, which have those water channels flowing, and then they finally mix into a bigger lake or things like that. So Jahangir contributed in that zone quite a lot. Shah Jahan, of course, we know him for Taj Mahal. Aurangzeb was not really was different to his successors and was not interested in this art and architecture thing. So what Aurangzeb built on the grounds of Taj Mahal was Bibi Ka Maqbara, which is in Aurangabad. Um, Quite a bad copy of Taj Mahal. Looks quite similar, but looks like a primary school kid tried to draw Taj Mahal and then ended up making something like Bibi Ka Maqbara. So very juvenile attempt to make something so grand. And then there were other rulers still, Bahadur Shah Zafar, when East India Company came and they were all empty. So by the time Bahadur Shah Zafar came and everything, कुछ नहीं बचा था. The kids had fought amongst themselves. The ruler had nothing, no power left, no money left. They were living in shambles when the East India Company came and take over. So those were the late times of Mughal Empire where they did not contribute much, but they were trying to just survive what was happening around in the country. So Fatehpur Sikri or examples in Agra, all of this forms a very good base for Mughal architecture, even in Delhi, because Delhi has seven different cities which were built and which were ruled by different kings, and they show contributions from all of them in different ways. So yes, Delhi has a lot of examples. Delhi में तो चौराहे के बीच में भी एक छोटा सा monument आ जाता है. It is that decorated with monuments in a way. Fatehpur Sikri is a kind of interesting example because it is example of a planned city, but a failure example where they built Fatehpur Sikri because Akbar wanted to be close to his Guru Salim Chishti, but because Fatehpur Sikri had a lot of water scarcity issues, he couldn't live there for very long, and hence it was just abandoned. So he built an entire setup, but couldn't live in it for very long. So it was abandoned very quickly. Humayun's tomb, of course, will be discussed in detail because this is one of the prime examples of Mughal architecture. And like I had said, the central chamber is octagon. If you look at the base, because they've chamfered at the corners, is octagon. It's the first garden tomb in the country. Like I said, this picture in the left top is the most sought after picture for any new and experienced photographers. Also, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And yes, it's a very typical example of Mughal architecture in the country. Then Taj Mahal, of course, will be discussed. I try and add a few videos in the lecture so that apart from me just going on and on and on and on about whatever I know, there is some insight or there is some sort of break from just me talking for a very long time. So I try and add some interesting videos. This is not my personal content, of course. I've sourced it from YouTube, but I just try to curate something so that you don't have to go look for the right kind of videos. So yes, Taj Mahal is being discussed through sketches and video as to what was the genius of Taj Mahal and how, why, even if it doesn't look, yes, it's a full marble thing, but it has a lot of secrets in the kind of structure it is. Because it is in the floodplain and it is very close to the river Yamuna, the kind of foundation that they thought about, how flooding can be mitigated and managed, and the mausoleum should stand its ground even if there is water or there is liquefaction or whatever. All of that was thought of very, very intricately, and we'll try and discuss as much as we can in the lecture. Yes, this particular slide talks about the various elements of spatial, structural, um, artistic elements of the entire structure and a little bit about the foundation also. The detailed pictures, of course. And then there are other examples, like I said, there's Bibi Ka Maqbara, there's Gol Gumbaz in Bijapur. It is very special because here the minars are stuck to the central chamber, and they're not away from the central chamber, but they are stuck to the chamber, and they have eaves or chajjas at every story. So every floor, every story. So yes, that's what makes it interesting. Then there's Panchmehal or the Fatehpur Sikri entire uh, the Diwani Khas, Diwani Am, Panch Mahal, Jodabai Ka Mahal, that entire complex of Fatehpur Sikri. Then there's Buland Darwaza, uske complex mein the masjid, the Salim Chishti ki dargah, all of that. The gardens in Jammu Kashmir. There's also neighboring countries where Mughals were very active and powerful. So you see examples as Badshahi Mosque, you see examples as Lal Bagh Fort in Dhaka, all of these. So they look very, very Mughal and Islamic, but yes, they had cultural influences also, right? And post all of this theory, we discuss a little bit about the last year's gate questions, questions around this topic from any other exams that have happened. So yes, we discuss a few questions before we move on to the topic and see if we have anything specific that we want to cover, right? So yes, this is how the lecture is going to pan out when the actual course begins. Of course, Islamic architecture comes much later in the lecture series. This is, I think, the fourth or fifth lecture. Before that, we cover a lot of ground in terms of um, architecture is when we were nomads or we were cave people, then forming into a society, then evolving into organized societies and all of that. So we then enter into civilizations and slowly, slowly we move ahead. So this comes much later in the actual lecture series as lecture 4 or 5. But yes, this is how a general lecture will look for you once the course begins. So yeah, I think that's it from my side for today. Um, if you have any questions regarding the lecture, you can go ahead and ask me. Otherwise, yeah, for all your other queries, ma'am is waiting. Anything? Okay, I think you can take over.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. It was a very insightful lecture, and I think you explained so well that they don't have any queries, so which is really good. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much.